Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Kontek podcast, Wired In. We have back with us special guest, Jeff Howard, the senior UX UI system programmer, talking to us again about UX and UI, like our last episode, but further clarification for MTRs, which are Microsoft Team Rooms, and Zoom Rooms. Now, we have another episode on that where we talk with Marcus about the importance of thinking about MTRs, but we want to dive deeper into these details because they are very important when you are thinking about designing a space and all the use cases that you have for a conference room for your team, especially if you're a Microsoft organization or you use Zoom for your videos. It is extremely important to think about these things ahead of time because there's a lot of technical details you have to get right, and they're more expensive if you don't do them right the first time. So that's what we're going to talk about today. So Jeff, tell us about the differences between when you are setting up a room that's, it's ProAV, it's going to be a great room, it's going to have great conferencing, but you need an MTR room specifically, and the differences between those two different rooms, and then we'll go from there.
Yeah, sure thing. So I think what customers are used to when they think about a Microsoft Teams room or a Zoom room is smaller spaces, and then they're larger, more complicated, conference rooms or boardrooms. That's when they usually think about ProAV. And I think the transition for the industry's move towards supporting Microsoft Teams rooms and Zoom rooms is that those two can be one and the same. So if you have a large space and you're already a Microsoft Teams house or a Zoom rooms house, you can start that conversation very early in terms of wanting a fully integrated ProAV system, but also having it run a Microsoft Teams room. A lot of users are comfortable with the Teams interface or the Zoom interface, and hybrid meetings are just the way we do business now. So if you can start that conversation early and really drill down on what are the users going to be doing in a room, in a system, and we have all kinds of solutions, very scalable solutions for your small huddle spaces all the way up to your large boardrooms.
Okay, so when you're thinking about designing a space and you're programming it and thinking about how all the hardware and software connects and the cabling and so on, there are, certain PCs that you can use that would do a great job. But then there's I'm actually a Microsoft team. That's a different PC or a different way that you have to program that. Like, talk to me about those kind of differences.
Yeah, absolutely. So MTR or Microsoft Teams rooms, like you said, are purpose-built PCs that can ingest content to be shared in a Teams meeting. They are completely integrated into the Teams platform, which comes with all the bells and whistles that Microsoft has in terms of room scheduling, in terms of AI annotation and note-taking. So it really gives you the full power of the Microsoft platform in a purpose-built MTR PC. And the same thing with Zoom. If you're a Zoom Rooms house and you can record or have AI note-taking on that platform, then the purpose-built Zoom Rooms PC is going to do the same thing. And that's a really powerful tool that you have rather than just having a PC running Zoom software or Teams software. You're not going to get that fully integrated user experience if you're just using something like that, which is why when we design ProAV systems with MTR or Zoom Rooms in mind, that is always going to be the heart and soul of the user experience.
Talk to me about like the cost differential between doing, we'll call it a regular room, and then doing an MTR. And then something you mentioned before we were recording was that if you don't do the MTR first, but then you realize you need an MTR, that gets way more expensive. Like, tell me a little of the nuts and bolts of the budget, thinking through that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think before we really had this full-scale integration, if you needed to do conferencing in sort of an old-school ProAV system, there was just a lot of hardware required for transporting camera video and microphone audio and audio DSP mixing. A lot of bells and whistles, a lot of equipment required really make that conferencing experience a positive one. And what we see now with the Teams and Zoom platforms is that those are incredibly powerful platforms that really handle a lot of the nuts and bolts of it internally. So we can really slim down what the other equipment and the other programming required to make that a positive user experience. And that's when I was talking about earlier in terms of clients who are more used to these larger rooms just being these massive price tags where you have to have a lot of video transport equipment. You have to have a lot of microphones. You have to have a lot of these other peripherals to make it into a usable space. And with MTR and Zoom, we can really slim down that. It can only be a few pieces of equipment, a little bit of configuration. And because the manufacturers in the AV industry have gotten so good about integrating with Zoom and MTR, it can be a very light touch, not a lot of equipment, not a lot of configuration. And if we know that at the beginning of a project or the beginning of a design, you can really slim down and create a fully functional space without a lot of equipment.
Have you done it the other way where you come in and it's a fully fledged AV, beautiful conference room, everything's great, and they're like, we want to make this an MTR specifically, and you're like, oh.
Yeah,
What is that like?
It's almost a complete redesign from a user experience standpoint, because you will typically have an existing system that has a control process and a touch panel from another manufacturer, and you either have to try to integrate MTR or Zoom controls into that space. Sometimes it's not even possible if it's an older system and the equipment is not compatible. So it ends up being a redesign from a UI and UX standpoint, but also sometimes from a hardware standpoint. And a lot of times clients won't want to go through the trouble. They'll say, "Oh, well, we have a PC in here," or users will bring their laptop in here, and they can just launch Teams or launch Zoom from their PC or laptop, and that'll get the job done. And it will. It is just not a positive user experience, because with an MTR deployment or a Zoom Rooms deployment, you have that control surface that's purpose built for that, and it's a one button to join a meeting. The meeting is already there on the screen. You walk in, you hit one button, and off you go. If you're asking users to come in and log into a PC or connect their laptop and then launch the software and then find the meeting, and it just becomes really cumbersome. And time is money, and if people have to spend 5 maybe more minutes to go into a room and get everything set up and get the camera right, and they're just not going to want to use the space, and then it becomes just a wasted system. It's a negative experience, and people are just going to have those meetings at their desks with their laptops, and that's really not going to be utilizing the full power of a fully integrated MTR or Zoom system.
That makes sense. And I can imagine the AI note taking, if you will, which I know is super popular. Everybody does that now because you can create all kinds of docs after the fact. That doesn't work as well if you were to have your PC come in, you kind of connect it or do whatever, and it's not a purpose-built MTR. Is that fair?
Yeah, I think that's right. And I think the value add of having multiple people in the space with a professional level microphone and speaker system, you're going to get that clarity of speech. Then the AI speech recognition and note taking is just going to be that much better. And we've seen some really cool products over the last few years in terms of wireless microphones and ceiling mic arrays or table mic arrays, where they are designed to pick up multiple speakers in different zones and really provide that clean audio that you're just not going to get with a laptop microphone. So the more that we can sort of increase the value of these platforms and just create a positive user experience, a room that people want to use with not a lot of extra bells and whistles, that's really the goal when we're integrating with Teams rooms or with Zoom rooms.
I like that. Okay, that's very helpful. What is there any kind of recommendations you would make if somebody is like, hey, I'm thinking I need to build a nice space and I know I'm going to use Microsoft. We're a Microsoft shop. I just know that. Is there anything that they need to think about, like the size of the space that matters, or any kind of planning, forecasting, budgeting that's kind of impacts that decision for them?
Yeah, absolutely. I think right off the jump, you're going to be wondering about the physical size of a space and audio. How are people going to be sitting in the space? And you need, like I said, you need microphones to cover all the speakers, and you also need to worry about how people are going to be sharing content. I think one of the biggest questions we have for clients is in a large space is how are people going to be sharing content in a meeting? And a lot of clients don't want just loose HDMI cables on tables. They don't want a wall plate or a floor box that people have to connect to. So in terms of sharing, you can share wirelessly through a number of devices that are out there in the market today, or you can, if your users are more comfortable with this, they can bring in their own laptops and join the Teams meeting or the Zoom meeting and just share from their laptop for content purposes, but still have those professional level microphones and cameras to create sort of a more positive meeting experience. So those are the type of questions you would really want to ask at the beginning of a project in terms of scaling up from like a huddle space or a small conference room. Is the logistics of getting audio and content into these meetings and what their users are comfortable with.
What do you tell, or is there any advice, wisdom, benefit of being a superior organization and using Google Workspace like me? Or is that what do we do? Do we get any benefit of this? Do we have a special room that we can build?
Unfortunately, no. I think,
Man.
and maybe this is where the AV industry needs to catch up, because after COVID, Zoom became so popular that was kind of the leading edge of where technology was going, and a lot of the AV manufacturers were very quick to bring some products to the market that integrated with Zoom, and then as Microsoft sort of caught up and started integrating the full weight of their various platforms. They've kind of been running neck and neck since then. And Google hasn't had the level of exposure to the AV industry, but
It's a shame.
we have some good partnerships with some developers at some of the AV manufacturers. So next time we meet with them, I'll bring them up. We'll be like, hey guys, we've had some Google clients come up and they want to get in on this party. They want full integration. What can you do for me?
I'm sure that's not the kind of folks that you typically work with. Those are like design shops and agencies or whatever. But does it matter whether you have a PC or an Apple? Is that something that you think about, or any kind of like OS operations just for people in the room? Because I know a lot of people have mixtures, especially like if you have some creative team members or folks that come maybe like head of marketing or something that needs to be in these rooms. They typically would have like a kind of an Apple product or anything like that.
Yeah, 100%. I think along with what platform you're using, I think the Windows or Mac conversation needs to happen early in the project. So Apple Macs are notorious for having issues with recording and capture. They have a special flag on their video output. I won't get too technical on it, but basically it makes it difficult to record. And where we come in is that when we design a system saying, hey, users are going to be bringing in Mac laptops, or we're going to run the Zoom Rooms instance off of a Mac, we can design and configure those systems to work. Whereas, in the old days, you would have these hardware codecs. Cisco was like a leading manufacturer of codecs, and then people would try to plug in their Mac laptop, and you just get a gray screen. It would actually kill the video signal. You're like, why can't I plug this in? So we have been down that road before, and so the earlier we know that there are going to be Apple Macs in a system, the better, and we can design around that and make sure that that content gets through to your meetings.
Okay, this is helpful. I want to zoom out a bit for this last question, but just to think, like, it seems pretty, I will say, daunting to think about all the edge cases that you might have for a room, because you just never know how these meetings are going to shake out, especially if it's 2, 3, 4, 5 years from now, and you want this room to last. You want to do it right the first time. What advice would you give to listeners who are dreaming about this space and they don't know all the edge cases that will come up and the exact needs that they might have, but again, want to do it right the first time? What do you guys have, like a process to kind of surface these kind of questions up front, or how do you help them think through these things in detail?
Absolutely. So I think the way that we design for a solution is to think about the roadmap. We can always build on something that is designed sort of with a more slim design. We can add to it, and I think that's where the scalability of what we provide really benefits, like an MTR deployment or a Zoom Rooms deployment, is because a lot of clients want to sort of have a couple rooms like on a smaller scale, just as a trial. We want to see how it works out, and that's great. And then they come back and they say, "Hey, we want to add to a system. We want to add video inputs. We want to add microphones. We want to add 2 camera shots." And with a few pieces of equipment, we can create a robust system behind the scenes with a lot of automation, a lot of features to add to it later if they're having a good experience and saying, "Hey, we really want to step our game up. We really want it to be a premier system, a premier space for our organization." And like I said, if you have built sort of this bedrock of usability with just a couple pieces of equipment to handle control and automation, to handle audio, to handle video, it's everything is scalable. And if you have the right pieces on the front end, then upgrading is not going to be that much more expensive. It's just going to be adding in the right equipment for the solution, and then having our team come in with our expertise and just providing the engineering behind the scenes to really give you that full scale premier space that you're after.
It's what some people might call like future proofing. Like
Exactly.
a little bit of work up front, just a little bit, will save you a lot of headaches in the future. Though you can't catch everything, and there's always going to be maybe additional edge cases that will be kind of funky. But do a little bit more work up front, and that'll save you a lot in the future. Is that a fair summary?
Absolutely. Yeah. We actually just had a corporate client in downtown Raleigh who had similar requests. We had done a number of, small conference rooms, a couple boardrooms, and then one sort of big event space. And they wanted to add some extra microphones and some extra video capability. And it was just a couple pieces of equipment, and then the engineering time to integrate that into their system. And they've had some great success there. They've already had a couple events, and we've had some good feedback on that. So if you have, like I said, if you have that baseline of control, of audio processing, getting that clean audio into meetings, then we can always build off of that. And I think the biggest thing that Kontek provides is the first year warranty. We have our support team come out, and they're talking to the clients. They're doing preventive maintenance checks, and at that point, when we are in the space with you and are seeing how it performs and getting that feedback, that's just an easy conversation to have. It'd be like, this is working very well, but we would really like to add something else to the system. We get that feedback from the support team all the time, and then we can start that conversation again, being familiar with how the system was originally designed, and then how their needs have changed or how their needs have grown since that project.
Cool. That's awesome. Yeah, I love hearing that. I love hearing a actual use case of doing this recently and just plugging up a couple extra things because you did all the front end work of thinking through things really well. That's great.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, thanks so much, Jeff. Appreciate your time today. There's some other episodes for our listeners to check out. You can go to Kontek.com and you'll find other episodes on the UX UI that we just released. And then there's another episode on MTRs and Zoom rooms. But there's a lot of other resources there if you guys are thinking about building a new, dreaming about a new space and just all the details that go into that. And you guys are there to support. But the number one thing I hear from everybody on your team is think about things as early as possible in the process and bring in a great expert like Kontek. So, Jeff, thanks so much, and hopefully we'll see you again on the show.
Absolutely. Thanks, Brandon.